All right, you guys, I see all those comments. I'm going to go through a video targeting all the guys that you guys are thinking about picking up in your squad this week. And we're going to talk about if they're a buy or not. And some of these guys, I might be a little bit more conservative on. That doesn't mean they're a great buy, but I'm always considering the amount of trades people have in mind. So always have that in the back of your mind too. If you're sitting with 15, 16, 17 trades, then you might be able to be a little bit more, free flowing with your trades. If you're sitting with 12 or less, I think there's a bunch of people that could almost run out of trades this week, or be very, very much close to with the four available. So, try not to go trigger happy just for the sake of it. But there's your little disclaimer. But we're going to start with Greg Marzhew, and comes in with two really good games. Obviously scored a try in the first one and didn't in the second one, but 7 tackle breaks and 213 meters. I think he's good enough to play at NRL level on the offensive side. The defensive side, who knows? But that whole team doesn't really play a lot of defense. So in terms of his fantasy scoring, he's a beast, really. Like, that's what you guys were talking about. Tackle breaks, runs meters, and a couple of line breaks in both of those, which is really good. So has a negative break even. We'll make some cash. And if he stays in the team for the rest of the year, you'd probably expect him to end up somewhere in the 400s. That's a sort of around that high 30s to 40 average, which could be pretty simple and pretty good there. And you could class him as maybe like your wing fullback cover if you have anyone that gets injured, and especially if you're sitting there with limited trades, then take this information for what you will. I personally won't be picking him up, but I know a lot of people are interested / already have him in their sides. So the other one to think about there is probably gained a little bit too much cash now, but that's Karl Lawton. And a 545k, the 3 games he's played, he's got 43, 67, and 62 with a couple of tries, a line break in each, plenty of tackles, running the ball pretty well. So he's someone that's going to make a decent amount of cash. So actually 3%. So 3 of the teams in the top 100 have him, which is very interesting. And they've gone all in on someone like Lawton, and it's kind of paid off with Simonson not being back, according to schedule, and also Schuster being out for another week. So Lawton gets the starting spot again. Will he lose it will he head back to the bench when Schuster comes back? And I think that's a yes. And that's what I've been saying this whole time. So I don't think he's a great option, but he's going to score well in his time on the park. And if there happens to be another injury, then he's going to stay there. You know what I mean? So you can keep that in mind, but not someone that I'll personally be picking up at this stage. I had a few people mention about Campbell Graham, and I think for me it's just more a little bit around the wait and see category for Graham. He's a high break even, as we know, which makes sense with him coming back and only hitting a 32, 20, and 27 his last 3. But he went on a little bit of a tear there from round 4 onwards. So 42, 63, 28, 43, and 58 was really, really solid, and that only included 2 tries as well. So a bunch of tackles there and running for over 100 meters every time as a center is a really nice base there. And he's someone that does play in round 17, which is great. But I think you can wait until he gets a little bit lower in price. If you can pick up someone like Graham, who was a keeper at the back end of last year, for somewhere near the 400k mark, then he could be a great pickup, as maybe he's your backup center. So if you're only sitting there with 2 right now, and don't have the cash to pick up someone else, and you happen to lose one of those guys for a week or 2, he could be someone to just sit there and could come in and score well for your squad. So that's that one there. Move on to Tommy Dearden at 410. I think he's got a little bit more cash to lose as well. I don't think they're going to get beat up as much as they did on the weekend, and he did pick up 29. So that included 6 missed tackles, which he won't have as many as that. If you look to his games, for the Broncos in the past, he's had 2 games there with 6 missed tackles out of his 30 games. So that's the most he's had, tied most he's had ever. Didn't kick the ball too much. Again, they just didn't have the ball a lot. So I imagine his score will increase a lot. I'm expecting somewhere near the 40 mark this week. So I think we watch him this week, and then he becomes again a possible option as a cash cow / a cover half player who's going to play in round 17. So think about that for Dearden over the next few weeks. All right, Taumalolo. A few people have been asking me about him, and is he worth a pickup this week? And look how high his break even is. Up in the 70s this week. Is owned by three people in the top 100 as well, which is interesting. Just with how poorly he's been playing, but you've got 54, 60 minutes, and it's 29 and 39. Obviously a sin bin in that one, but would have been somewhere in the mid 30s, which is not good enough for someone like Taumalolo in general, right? Just hasn't had the tackle busting and offloading ability that he has in the past. You see there the majority of games in previous years, he's sitting at 4, 5. 4 is very much his standard sort of tackle busting game with some higher games in there with random tries. So you can tell that he's only had one really good game this year, and that was when he was over 200 meters. He's only done that once this year, which is really strange. And you look at that couple of games last year, round 2 and 3, 345 and 290 meters, which is crazy. So I think personally, you don't pick him up until he gets back to that, tackle busting best and running the ball more. He's missing out on close to 10 points in run meters, and then you'd say another 9 to 10 in tackle bust as well. And that gets him up into the, if you just base it on his 54 minutes last game, you're looking at a score of 60, which is very much normal around his average. He's an over 60s kind of player, and he's only averaging 45 this year. So until that happens, I don't think he's worth bringing into your side. He could come good this week, but we never know. So I'd be waiting for Taumalolo at this stage. We move on to Jesse Ramien at 583k. Same story as last week. I still think he's a great buy. He's had one game of 13 where he was kind of their best player in that 27 minutes. The rest of his scores have been 32 in a 70-minute effort, but any 80-minute efforts he's been 48, 41 plus from that score last week onwards. So he's a great option, tackle buster. He's got 3 games over 10 tackle breaks already, so an awesome option for anyone's side. At 583, obviously a bit expensive when you can go for someone like Averillo, for example, who's that little bit more expensive and playing in the actual halves and kicking the ball. So not really too much more to say on Averillo. Obviously started poorly, 20 in a 19. I traded him out after round 3, of course, and he's done this ever since. So a low score of 30 in there at 583. He didn't get to kick the ball as much, but that last 4 games has been incredible, and I'd expect more scores around this 50 odd. He's not going to score a couple of tries every week, but a few goals, kicking for 300 to 400 meters, making some tackles, making some more runs. I'd be expecting that from him. So if you're looking at that for someone in the centers, he's owned by 67 people in the top 100. So it makes complete sense why they're in the top 100, because Averillo's been an absolute tear, and I think most people should have him in their squad this week. If you need a center or a half, I think either way you can pick him up. I don't know how I'm going to get him in personally, but I'm kind of just hoping that Karl Flanagan gets named and they share the duties. That would be ideal, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen, especially after winning a game in that last one. Okay, Simonson, here we go. He's just never been a great scorer. That's my little climb against him. Look at this. One good game at a winger. And he had a 49 with a double, but a 59 in a normal kind of one try, a couple of line break games. There's so many games in the teens, in the single digits in 80 minutes. He just scares me. Like, yes, I understand he had an absolute belter on the weekend. Couple of try sits, couple of line breaks, 243 meters. He's not going to do that every week. Yes, they play the Dragons this week, and that might be a fairly easy game for him. But look at the scores this week. Yes, I understand he's on the wing, but how many good wingers do we have? Do we ever complain about Josh Mansour or these kind of guys on the wing? Nofaluma before this year. If you're a good fantasy scorer, you're a good fantasy scorer. Yes, a change of position can help, but I don't see it improving him that much to be like a 40-point scorer. I see him probably averaging somewhere where Aikens was in that mid 30s, sorry, and that him at 358. That's just not enough. Like, if he continues to get 35 to 40 at each of the next bunch of weeks, he only makes 100 or so thousand. Yes, he's going to play round 17 for you, and I think it's crazy that 18% of people have him in the top 100. But yeah, again, that's my opinion. I'm just not going to make decisions on these types of players that have played for years and haven't scored very well at all to then change position and in a team that's not doing very well and expect him to do great going forward. I'm just not going to do it, unfortunately, and I'm not going to pick him up. And yes, they might bite me in the bum, but the majority of the times, the reason I'm making these decisions and saying this is because in the past they haven't done that well, and that's why I won't do that. Talakai, high break even. That's anyone to think about here with him. Scores haven't been amazing this year. You're looking at minutes off the interchange, and tackles have been down really low, which is interesting, and meters gained have been high. So good to see that that's happening, but his PPM hasn't been strong at all. If we look at the PPM of 0.56, so if he's playing 80 on the edge, you're going to be seeing some scores in the 40s, which, after the next few weeks, if we can see his scores pop up into that 40s, he's going to lose a little bit more cash. If you get him around 350k, scores in the mid 40s is going to see him make about 150k, a little bit more, right? Will that be enough? So will you be able to bring him in and get him as a scorer over the next few weeks in round 17 as well? And then are you going to be looking to trade him out? The good thing is with Talakai is we look at scores last year, especially through the back end. We've got a bunch of high 30s. Then we have 80 minutes in the second row there with 68s, 34 in that time. He got a 65 off the interchange, a 42, a 76, 59, and a 42 in the lock role there. So he actually played a really, really substantial role for the Sharks fans. And if you talk to any of them, they'll say they love him as a player. He's obviously coming off a bit of an was he suspended and then a little bit of an injury in there, so came back for 2 games and didn't play the next bunch. So he's only played 4 games this year, and you imagine he starts to get into his work a little bit more. And he had his first game on the weekend with 58 minutes, so I'd be expecting him to improve on his scores and improve obviously on his minutes. Now that Wade Graham should be out for a pretty long time, you'd imagine, with all the how the concussion protocol's been going. So Talakai becomes a very interesting option as someone who plays 17, and I'd probably be waiting a week or 2, but he's definitely on my radar going forward. I had a question on Shaun Johnson, and they asked me, in relation to my previous video about the amount of keepers in my side, is would I class Johnson as a keeper if I'm bringing him in now? And I definitely think so, yeah. So if you're looking at him starting to play a lot better, you can see that obviously the last 2 games, the last 3 games he's played, he has taken over the kicking with Townsend being out and Moylan being his partner. So in that 3-game stretch, he's got a 39, 57, and 71. And what you see there is that first game, just not much else happening, right? A few errors there. An error and a missed tackle, 43 metres, 412 kick metres, 15 tackle breaks. You can see that as probably his flaw, with then the potential for any attacking stats. So he had no goals that game. When you look at the next game, he has 6 goals and a try assist. 4 missed tackles in that one, and he still managed to get 57, right? And going off early. The next one here, he's got a few more attacking stats, but that base is still there. 15 tackles, 46 metres, right? That's there every week, and the kick metres are going to be 400 plus. So if you can expect about a 40 floor, and you will expect some games to be around there, but then you're going to expect the games around the 60 to 70 mark, and an average of somewhere in the 50s. So if you think that's going to be enough for your side, picking up someone at 619k, as a keeper in your team, then go for it. I think that's a good option for anyone's squad, definitely, if you need that half cover. You don't want to spend up and get like a DCE or something like that. Next one's going to be Joey Manu, and moves back to the centres this week. So for anyone who's interested in him, I'd probably wait. Yeah, I suppose you get him on a little bit of a lower break even this week, and he'll make a little bit of cash. But I also think there's so many other good centres that I'd probably go for them, like a Ramien, Bird, Averillo. These types of players I'd go before Manu, and you can see, in the top 5,000, only 2.74% own him. So, yes, I'm in that top 5,000. Dropped out of the 1,000 this week, unfortunately, but yeah, that's that with Manu. I just think there's a couple other better options who I prefer to have over Manu, even though he's had a bunch of good weeks lately. Adam, Kieran, and Verrills. So they're now next to like sort of combination in the 9 role for the Roosters, and I'm interested to see if he goes back to that sort of 50 to 60 minute role. After the minutes he's been playing so far. Obviously, the one on the weekend was his best game of the season, and what we're seeing here is him getting back to kicking the goals full time, and he's definitely their best kicker. So I think for them, they're going to want him on the park a little bit more, and they kind of went, all right, well, if you're going to be on the park a lot more, you're going to be, we need you to do something out of dummy half. And he really did that in his kicking game. I thought it was really strong, and just did a really good job. So I'd expect him to play some decent minutes. Will he play about 60? If he does that, and he can clean up those missed tackles a bit, which was a bit high on the weekend, I think he can be someone that averages around that mid-30s to 40s and could be a solid cash-out option. But then the question is, does he lose his starting spot to Verrills? But the question will be, who ends up kicking? And at the moment, Sam Walker's in there, but he's not too great on the old kicking tee at this stage. Why is Verrills not in here? There he is. Don't know why that wasn't coming up. Sam Verrills, 254k. So obviously a pretty solid cash out as well. And if you need a player for round 17, he could be a man to play some big minutes. He did get 50 minutes for 29 score in round 8 in this year. But we look at what happens when he plays some decent minutes in the past. And there's some 80-minute games for 44, 68, 60, 40 there in 76 minutes. So not a massive scale of games to go through, but in all, he's going to be a solid player. 254k, you're not really going to go wrong. He's going to play in 17 if he's not injured. Let's just hope he manages to stay on the park. He's only played 2 games this week. I think you can hold off on him. And do you hold off on Kieran? I really don't think there's a lot of great cash out options this week, but they're kind of the 2 guys that I'd be thinking of at this stage that are going to be playing in 17. You'd imagine they both play in some capacity. Yeah, that's about it. Obviously, they don't have like Walker and Lamb playing Origin, so there's no real chance for Kieran to play in the 7 role. So yeah, it's a hard one there as to who should pick or if you should go with any of them at this stage. Cody Nicorima, interesting one, just with the fact that CHC went down. He scored really well all season. He's averaging what 53. So if you had him at the start, which not many people do, 0.4% of people in the top 5,000. If you did that, you're really happy with his scoring. And you look at what's happened in general. He actually, the last bunch of games, has kicked the ball less in play. And is that because of Reece Walsh being part of it when he was playing 6? Is it because CHT's back? So let's have a little look at what happens when he's not in the team. Obviously, they got beat on the weekend. He still did score well, but just has more involvement. He tackles obviously stay the same, but the run meters are sort of up and down on a regular basis. But he's going to be kicking the ball a lot more, which he was at the start of the season. And a bunch of these games when Sean O'Sullivan was in there, and he was they was splitting the role, 200, 300 each, 250. So you can expect a little bit from him, but I'd expect an average very similar to what he's doing right now. So not too much to talk about on Nico. Joshy Curran at 520. So it looks like he's going to maintain this type of role, I think. And it'll be interesting to see what happens because Bailey Siren end up playing the 80, which I don't think he would have. So I'm assuming Curran will play this kind of role, starting in the lock, moving to the edge and getting sort of 60 minutes. And I think he can average somewhere in the 40s. I don't see him averaging 50 plus unless he's on the edge full time, like for the 80 minutes a game. 22% have him in the top 100, which is interesting. But yeah, I think he'll make a little bit of cash, but he won't be a keeper. And I just don't see him being worth it in people's squads this week. Yeah, last week was probably a solid option. You gained a little bit of cash from that, but I don't know. It's hard. He obviously plays 17, but I just think you're going to have to trade him out afterwards. Or he's like an 18th or 19th man, averaging sort of mid-40s. But that's that there. And our last one is going to be Lukey Thompson. 55 average. Just had a lower game on the weekend, but also the game before. So less attacking stats, as you can see. No offloads and only 1 tackle break in the last 2 games. Meters were still up there. Tackles were fine. It just hasn't happened the last 2 weeks. And if you think he's gonna go back to normal, then I think you can keep him as an average of 55 there. And the only thing to think of is he's got a higher break even this week after a couple of lower scores, and I don't think his price gets any higher than what it is, maybe 700 max over the next 10 or so weeks. But anything other than that, I don't think so. So if you like him as a player and you want him as a little bit of a pod in the top 5,000, he's owned by 8.7%, then go for it. But if not, that's all I've got for you. I hope this helps, in basing your decisions on the types of guys you're looking to buy this week. Obviously, there's a bunch of people there in all different positions, but a lot of them are that sort of mid-range tier guys. We've got a few gun centers. We got gun half or 2. But other than that, it's mainly just some fringe guys that we're looking to pick up for round 17. So I've had a bunch of questions about how many guys is there many guys we can use to cash out. But I really don't think so. You've got like Sawali for 17. You've got the chances of Kieran and Verrills. Dearden could be a half a cash cow option. Talakai. So there's not too much there. But I think we just got to wait until 17 and make your trades then and use them as a cash out so you can maybe save some cash for around 18 and 19 so you can upgrade or just play it that way. But there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Please do like and subscribe if you are. I really appreciate all the support so far, and we'll catch you in the next video. I'm going to talk about the guys I think you should really hold in your squad, especially if you're running out of trades. So look out for that one. We'll catch you then, guys. Bye-bye.